Because it's a Taylor Swift release day. A very, very big deal around here. The Tortured Poets Department is out now. The group chat is here. Let's do this. This is Commotion, and I think the best place to start is right here. That is the title cut off the brand new album from Taylor Swift. It's called The Tortured Poets Department. But then, 2 hours after its release, Taylor surprised fans with even more. A double album called The Tortured Poets Department, the anthology, with 15 extra cuts, which means that my eldest daughter did not sleep last night. Also, Taylor Swift has been pretty inescapable for the past year or so, and now this. So is the album a victory lap? Or, and God strike me down if I'm going too far here, is this just too much Taylor? Joining me now are Tyler Foggatt, Cassie and making his Commotion debut, Adam Sternbergh. They've got a lot to say about the new Taylor album and some other big stories this week. Welcome to the group chat, folks.
Hello.
Hi.
All right, Tyler, I'm going to start with you. How are you feeling about this new Tyler? Tyler, you don't have an album. Taylor has an album. How are you feeling about the Taylor album
I
so
might as
far?
well have an album. I feel so close to Taylor that what she does. Yeah,
You've done a lot of work on this.
Yeah, I'm honestly still processing it, given how much new music she gave us in such a short period of time. I feel like I was still listening to, the 1989 re-recording that she released in October. And the fact that we have a brand new album now, a double album, is a bit, hard to process. But I think in some ways I'm slightly disappointed by the sound. I feel like it does very much feel like an extension of, the work that we've seen her do before. The two main producers on the album are Jack Antonoff and Aaron Dessner, who she's been working with for quite a bit. And the first half of the album in particular is very Antonoff heavy, which is to say that it's very poppy and kind of reminds me of Midnights, which is her the studio album that Taylor released before this. So I think in some ways I was kind of hoping for a new sound because the aesthetic of the album, the whole like dark academia thing, made me think that maybe she was going for more of like a soft rock or just something that we hadn't really heard before. But I will say that the entire rollout and the songs themselves, even if they're not brand new in terms of sound, I do think that the entire thing has been delightfully unhinged in a way that I really appreciate.
You ended on a positive note there. I was worried you might have to go into hiding for some of the stuff you had said prior to that. Let me ask you this. Taylor surprised fans with this extra 15 songs. You actually had to rejig your interview. You were ready with an interview, and then in the middle of the night, more stuff. What do you feel about those extra cuts?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get the chance to interview Taylor, but I was working on basically like a piece for our culture newsletter for the New Yorker that was kind of a preview of the album. And so, yeah, you stay up until midnight, you are, approaching your, the end of the album and you're writing your thing. And then all of a sudden Taylor, starts a countdown and you're like, oh God, what is this a countdown to? Is it a music video? Is it something that doesn't really matter? Is it like more eras, for dates? But in this case, it was a countdown to a double album. And so then, 15 new songs in addition to the original 16 were released at 2 a.m. And it was interesting because the second half of the album, those are songs that she made with mostly with Aaron Dessner, who is one of the founding members of The National. And she worked with him on Folklore and Evermore. And I think that the second half of the album is very much it's in that vein of music. It's very indie, it's deeper, the songs are more intimate. I'm still I have only listened to the second half of the album a couple times at this point, but I think that, the second half of the album might even be better in some ways. And so, it's hard. I feel like she's given us almost too much music to absorb at once. And I wonder whether we actually could have used a bit more curation.
All right, Adam, what are your thoughts on the album?
I mean, I agree with Tyler in that it's a lot, uh, and yet it feels very familiar in a lot of ways. I should say that I feel like I'm sort of the requisite neutral observer on this panel. Not by no means do I have my PhD in Swiftology, but I'm impressed with the rollout of the album. I think dropping a completely surprise second album is actually kind of a baller move.
Totally.
And I'm generally a fan of prolific artists. I actually feel like, I like artists who produce a lot of work. I like novelists who write a lot of novels. I feel like sometimes in our current moment, people could be a little bit overly precious about, dropping things into the world with an eyedropper. She is not an eyedropper artist. She is a floodgates artist. And I feel like she's the one artist who you can look at and just say, like, maybe take your foot off the gas pedal. Like, maybe just release the 15 best songs rather than the 31 songs. But of course, it's not just about the music. And as a kind of neutral observer, I am always impressed that there's a sort of concurrent phenomenon that happens. There's the critical reaction to music, but then of course there's the Swiftology begins, the deciphering of the lyrical meanings, the Easter eggs and all that sort of stuff, which has a kind of, even at an arm's length, has a kind of like thrilling adventure quality to it. So I'm envious of all the people who are just poring over these lyrics this morning and the images and the QR codes and all of it to kind of decipher all that there is for them today. There's a kind of abundance to that I actually think is really exciting right now.
Speaking of phenomena, Cassie, I want to ask you this because the album leaked yesterday. That was semi-interesting. What was very interesting was then people's minds. Many people were like, "Wait, is this actually the real album or is it AI?" What do you make of that? Where are we at in pop culture where that is a concern?
I think that definitely crossed my mind when it first leaked. Also, it was so shady. Like when things leak now, it was just a Google Drive that was floating around. I'm like, I'm not clicking that. Who even knows what's in there? But also, like, I didn't. It might be a controversial opinion, but I wasn't following the Taylor album drop that closely. Just this morning, I opened it up on Spotify, and I was like, yeah, there's 31 songs. That sounds like Taylor. Like, it didn't really occur to me that there was a double drop last night.
Well, Taylor is known to be quite calculated. So I did want to ask this. Did you think that, Tyler, I'll ask you this. Did the anthology come out kind of as a reaction to the album being leaked, or do you think this was planned all along?
I had that thought that she was trying to give people who had, since the leak had already gone out, maybe this was her way of giving people new music, even if, the new music had been kind of spoiled a bit. And that maybe there was initially a plan for, to be kind of like Folklore and Evermore, where it's like two albums that are recorded at roughly the same time, but then they're spaced out, so that they're not coming out the exact same day. So I think maybe she could have moved up the release a little bit. But I do think that as a, Swiftologist, she has been, giving us a lot of like peace signs lately, constantly holding up a peace sign, but like, we've all Swifties have seen that as like the number 2. And so I think that there have been a lot of hints that this was going to be a double album. And so maybe the release date changed slightly. But I think that there was always a larger plan here. And Swift even, one of the things that I love about Swift, and, Adam, you spoke to this, like the Swifties who just kind of, collect and analyze the music. I've always thought that if Taylor Swift were not Taylor Swift, she would be a Taylor Swift fan, in that she herself is so into the little clues. And clearly, her fans don't sleep because they have to stay up late to listen to her stuff, but also like she doesn't sleep either. And so like you kind of feel like you're in on it with her in this way that's really fun. And one of my favorite lines from the new album is a line where she basically says, "I cry a lot, but I am so productive." And yeah, I just feel like it should be like a new motto, not only for her, but for like every Taylor Swift fan.
Start the T-shirt press. Start it. Those are going to sell. I want to play another cut off the album, and this is one that a lot of people are already talking about. That is a song called "But Daddy, I Love Him." That's the only way I can say it. I can't just say it normally. It's off the new album that is officially out today. Tyler, this one's got a lot of people talking, yourself included. Tell me, why is that?
Yeah, so earlier when I said that the album is delightfully unhinged, this song is one of the reasons why. So Taylor Swift broke up with her longtime boyfriend, Joe Alwyn. I think that they dated for like 6 years, before this album came out. And so a lot of people assumed that because of all the sad girl vibes associated with the rollout, that this was going to be a breakup album about Joe. And what was really interesting was that when the album came out, a lot of the fans quickly gleaned that a bunch of the songs actually seem to be about Matty Healy, the frontman of the 1975, who Taylor seemed to kind of have this like whirlwind relationship with. I mean, basically, it seems like Matty was the rebound. And Swift got a lot of flack for that relationship because Healy is a provocateur. He, made all of these kind of controversial comments, racist remarks, even kind of went after Ice Spice, and basically fans kind of freaked out and the relationship ended. And I think a lot of people assume that Taylor ended things because he was so messy. And that whole thing kind of got memory hold when Swift started dating Travis Kelce. And so it was kind of amazing that this album comes out and it's so much about Healy. At least it seems like it's about Healy. She never really confirms who these songs are about, so we just have to speculate. Because obviously she could have just let that go. Everyone would have been happy just to hear about Joe and to think about Travis. And instead, she's bringing us back to Matty. And in this, one song that you just pulled out, "But Daddy, I Love Him," not only is she kind of talking about how obsessed she is with Healy, in a later song on the album, she implies that maybe he ghosted her and he ended the relationship, which is also interesting. But in this song, she actually goes after her fans for, I think is like maybe the first time she's ever done that, where she basically, talks about the judgmental creeps who think that they know what's best for her. There's a line, sanctimoniously performing soliloquies I'll never see, thinking it can change the beat of my heart when he touches me. And later in this song, there's like my favorite line is when she says, "But Daddy, I love him. I'm having his baby. No, I'm not, but you should see your faces." And so it's kind of like her trolling her fans, which I've never seen Taylor Swift do before. I really think that she's on one. And her dad. Yeah.
Adam, let me ask you this. Taylor is dropping this album during the highest grossing world tour of all time. Super successful NFL media takeover with her current beau being the previously mentioned pro footballer Travis Kelce. Do you think Taylor Swift is overexposed at this point?
I mean, I think she transcends the category of over or underexposed. I think at this point, it's sort of like, we just had this big solar eclipse, and it's like asking, was the solar eclipse overexposed? I mean, it's like a phenomenon that gives people something to talk about. And I think that's something that she understands better than certainly any pop musician, and possibly better than any sort of public figure right now, is that we really crave a conversation. We crave a sort of ongoing conversation with each other where we're talking about the same thing. We don't just want things to listen to or to watch. We want something that's going to like get us online, get us arguing, get us speculating. And everything that Tyler just laid out is like completely central to that. And I think it's actually a really admirable artistic project. She clearly is the best at it. And I think it's at some point, I'm sure there's people doing this now, but people are going to look back at her as a musical artist, but also as a sort of artist of the discourse, and the way that she kind of understood that part of what people want from her is to get them talking. And she's so good at that. And we aren't done talking about her. So I don't think she's overexposed yet.
Tyler, last question to you in this chunk here. Between this new album and Beyonce's Cowboy Carter release, it's already shaping up to be an interesting 2025 Grammys. How do you see all of this playing out for Album of the Year?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to speculate this early on, but I will say that I think I was more, we talked earlier about how the Tortured Poets Department, despite it being such a long album and having so much music, it is kind of sort of along the lines of what we've seen from Taylor before. And so I think Cowboy Carter is a bit more impressive to me in that it really did feel like Beyonce was doing something incredibly new and innovative that we hadn't seen before. And so I kind of feel like that should be rewarded, especially since Beyonce has been, robbed so many times at the Grammys, and Taylor already won for Midnights, which I didn't think was necessarily, her best album or even the best album that was nominated last year. Like, I feel like Lana Del Rey honestly probably should have won. But yeah, I mean, I think it should, if we're talking about Beyonce versus Taylor, I think Beyonce has done something more interesting here. But I also wouldn't be surprised if it, it ends up going to like Billie Eilish or something too.
Anxious to see your social media feed after that. I'm Ali Hassan. I'm sitting in for Elamine Abdel Mahmoud. This is Commotion. I've got Cassie Cow, Tyler Foggatt, and Adam Sternbergh with me. Let's switch gears here and talk about another release, and that is the docuseries Conan O'Brien Must Go, which finds the iconic late-night host traveling the world to meet his superfans, all while soaking up the unique cultures of their countries in classic Conan style, of course. So here's a bit of a trailer.
This is a travel show I'm doing. Oh, my. Where I visit my fans. Holy shit! From around the world. Tango.
It's pronounced tango.
Last tango in Paris.
Last tango in Paris.
You say tango or dongo?
Tango.
Tango, right?
It's tango.
It's not tango! These people live here!
That's the trailer for Conan O'Brien Must Go. Adam, this is basically building off the series Conan Without Borders, which did slightly diminish the work of Doctors Without Borders, but that's neither here nor there. That series ended because of the pandemic. How does this new series hold up, in your opinion?
I mean, I think the series is great from what I've seen of it. That clip is a pretty representative taste. If you liked the 45-second clips of Conan on Hot Ones, just kind of vamping and being crazy, like, you'll probably enjoy 45 minutes of him running around Norway doing the same thing. As someone who's a longtime Conan observer and fan, it's really nice to see him freed from the restrictions of like a late night talk show format. I think the narrative for him for a long time, and the sort of Conan paradox, was that he's clearly one of the most inventive comic minds that we have, and yet he came up in the most restrictive TV format there is, right? Like the late night show, you got your death, you got your band, you got your guests. And so to see him unleashed is certainly a lot of fun. He's the center of the show, and his sensibility is at the center of it. So if you like him and you like his sensibility, I think it'll be a really fun ride for you.
Cassie, what do you think of Conan in this new series?
I agree with what Adam said. I like that he's out of the talk show format, but I actually think that he doesn't I think he likes the talk show format. I actually think it's like a little sad for me to see him moving into the travel docu format, because that's a trend that's been going throughout comedy. A lot of TV shows are just being down budgeted to travel shows where you get one camera guy to follow a comic and you just generate as much material as you could with a full cast. So I think that's kind of sad that even Conan, arguably the last man holding on to the talk show format, can't really get out of that.
That's interesting. I don't know if that's down budgeted. I mean, with the size of his legs, he's got to fly first class, and then he's got a big crew there with him, lots of cargo, lots of beards and other equipment.
I will say I do like that this show focuses on him interacting with his fans rather than doing the talk show format with guests like that. I think that gives him a lot more of a personal touch that he hasn't really been able to have. I think since his podcast, we've been really craving that kind of attention from him.
Sure. Well, it builds off those chats that he does have in his podcast. Some of them are with friends, celebrities, and some of them are with super fans. So it builds on all of that. Tyler, Conan is, as Cassie said, one of the last ones standing from this classic late night talk show era from the 90s and mid 2000s. He's got this podcast. He just did Curb Your Enthusiasm and Hot Ones, as Adam mentioned. What do you think keeps Conan in the pop convo when his other contemporaries have kind of faded a little bit and some very much?
I honestly think it's his ability to be funny in any context. I mean, you get the sense that he could be funny at a funeral. He can do it on a podcast. He can now do it on a travel show. I think he's just able to kind of adapt to these different mediums in ways that other comedians are not. I mean, one thing that I always think about is I loved the the sitcom Seinfeld, and I like Jerry Seinfeld's stand-up, but comedians in cars getting coffee, you know, it can sometimes be just very awkward to watch, not awkward in a funny way. I mean, it's like clearly sometimes the conversations are a little bit rigid and there are a lot of cuts and it just doesn't really work. And I feel like it often doesn't work when you take someone who's either used to being in front of a mic, you know, on stage, or, you know, a late night show host who's used to being in the chair, and you try to put them out into the real world. And Conan can go anywhere. And I think the other thing that I really admire about Conan that I've seen a lot in the new HBO show is just his it's his generosity. And by that, I mean his ability to kind of step back and either play the straight man or let someone take over when someone else is really cooking. And it doesn't, you know, and in this case, it could just be like his fan who is just like happens to be an incredibly funny person, and he can just kind of step back and laugh at what the fan is saying and also laugh at himself in a way that I think other comedians who can sometimes be like attention hogs, they really struggle with that aspect of the game. You
could say when he was rubbing chicken wing sauce on his face, he was being a bit of an attention hog too.
Yeah.
But I love everything he does. So
I will say, just to build off what Tyler was saying, there are some inherent pitfalls in the sort of comedic travel show, because part of it's very easy for the joke to become like, I'm in this crazy country and look at this weird food they're eating, and like, what's your name? That sounds weird. And I think Conan is insulated almost entirely from that because of the quality Tyler was just saying, that and part of that is from hosting a late night show for 20 odd years. But he's very good at both understanding when he's the joke and also not getting in the way of the joke when he's not the joke. And so, like, there's other comedians who I've seen in this format or I could imagine trying this format. I'd feel it would be a lot more cringe potential. But I think he's actually particularly well suited to this. And even the way the show kicks off, he really signals very early on that he kind of understands his role as both your host, but also kind of the fool. He's the fool, the jester in the show.
Well, I listened to his podcast, and I was listening to one with Mike Sweeney and a few of the other producers of this particular series. That was the latest episode of the podcast. And they were asking him, you know, do you get tired? Because it is just go, go, go. As soon as they land, it is go, go, go until they're back on the plane. There's no real downtime. And he was saying that I'm like a kid in the candy store when I get to be funny and foolish. And so I just felt like the right man for the job is doing the job in this particular case. Like, he doesn't tire very easily. I did want to ask you this just in the last minute. Cassie, where would you like to see Conan? You're a fan. Where would you like to see his shtick go next?
I mean, I think what I love about Conan is like you said, all of his peers in the late night space have kind of like fallen off, mostly just because they're done with it. They want to sit in their mansions and enjoy their money. But Conan, it really, you can see comic to comic, like he just loves it. He wants to do it until he dies. Like, he is restless if he doesn't get to do comedy. And for that, I think he's such a treasure. And I think he really invests in the industry and like uplifts a lot of up and coming comedians as well. And he just does so good for the entire comedy space that I just want him to do whatever his heart wants. You know, I feel like that we've like beaten this man down so much, and he just wants to be there and tell jokes. And he is a really generous comedian. And I just want him to have the space that he wants to have.
I agree with you. And I think, you know, the format of the talk show also involves him talking to people that maybe he didn't necessarily want to talk to. And I think freed of that has been something we've all benefited from in a way. It'd be weird to have a debate about Conan. Maybe one day we'll find somebody who is very anti-Conan. You know, write in and let us know if you're that person. But for now, nothing but for love for him and this format. We're going to leave it there, folks. Thank you so much for chiming in on all of this.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Tyler Foggatt is a senior editor at The New Yorker. Cassie Cow is a comedian and TV writer and a newbie to us. Adam Sternbergh is no newbie. He's a new novelist and culture editor for opinion at The New York Times. Taylor Swift's new album, The Tortured Poets Department, the anthology, is out now. Leave some time and space in your schedule for that this weekend. You're going to need it based on what I've just heard. And, of course, you can catch Conan Must Go on Crave TV. And you can do that this weekend, too. That is it for the podcast. You can listen to any episode of Commotion anytime, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Ali Hassan, sitting in for Elamin Abdul Mahmoud. Have yourself a great weekend.